Yes, Pankaj.
Okay. Um, so we need to decide like whether we can achieve any given functionality can be done with out of box feature. If not, then only we go for a development. Why? Because we have things do not only writing the code, we need to test and we need to deploy from a one environment to another environment. So now we have seen like where actually we write the code and where it will give say where it will get saved and compiled, and the programming language that we use called Apex, and which can be used only in the force.com platform, which can be written and saved and compiled only in the force.com platform. We cannot have a compiler separately available, and we don't need it as well. And we can use some of the tools like Visual Studio Code or Mate or IntelliJ that can be used to write the code that can be installed in our computer. So which will be easy for us if you're following any kind of development tools. So you can do, but still it will not store it somewhere else. Still it will store in the cloud only, whatever the code you write. Hmm. Okay, and we have seen like what is MVC architecture, multi-tenant architecture, why we having, and to because of this multi-tenant architecture, we have a concept called a governor limit. So every transaction have a certain limits to limit the resources. It's not overloaded by the single person or a single instance. Okay, so far we have seen this. So when we'll use Apex, so we know like if we're not able to achieve anything with out of box feature, we'll go for Apex. So what are all the different scenarios? So let's say if you're having a email services. So when I'm saying email services, let's say if you want to send out some emails, so usually we have from the workflows. So also we can send an email alert, right? When something happen, we do send a email alert, but not on the record action. So once you have built one custom page and there on click you want to send an email, or like same way when you make some record changes also you want to send an email, but the recipients are not like email fields on the record, or not the owners of the record. There are somebody else, or like where we configure in some other object and we need to pull and we can bring up the like form the list, and to that list you have to send the email, which is obviously not possible using the out of box feature. And you having like a custom data that you need to put or like insert in your body. So usually when you have a standard email templates, what we can do, if you add one record, it will take the merge fields from it. Like if you add some fields, like what is the contact name, what is their address, and what is the city, and if it's opportunity, what is the opportunity amount, if it's account, what is the company name. So if you have one record, it can add the data from that record. But when you're having multiple records to combine data that you need to add into your email, which cannot be possible with our out-of-box features. So in those cases, we'll go for a email services using a custom Apex. And when you're saying email services, it's not only sending out the emails and reading the emails. um, to send emails and receive emails. When you're saying receive emails, so how do we receive? Let's say what we do was we build a service and it will generate kind of one unique email ID. And when you send an email to that email address, it looks like an email address, but it's a service. When you send an email to that one, we can read okay what you have sent, who has sent, what is subject, what is the body, and we can read what is the attachment. We can read all of this and we can process, and we can either create record or load the records or do some other action. That's called a inbound email services. So when you receive an email and do some actions, that's called inbound emails. Sending out the emails is called a outbound emails. And okay, what else we can do? Like sorry, we can do a complex business logics on saving the record, on saving records. That means like there is a concept called triggers where like different triggers are available, like when you save the record, before save, after save, before create, after create, deletion and deletion. So all different scenarios. If you look at the flow, right? So we're having different scenarios. All the scenarios will come in here called triggers, where we can do a logics not only from the related records, they are like unrelated records, any record, anything that you can do from your code. Like you can pull any object, any record and use the data and validate it. And you have a complex validations. So usually when we having a validations, what we can do, we check whether the data is right or not, right? Validation rules, and we'll add an error message. And the error message could be on a record or on a field. But you have a complex validation that you need to check in some other object's data, and with using the data you need to validate, which cannot be possible in a normal validation rules or the custom validation rules, where which can be achieved using a with triggers and a custom apex we can do. And doing a callouts. Callouts means when you have integration with some other system. So when you need to have integration to the other platform. So when you want to communicate, what you want to communicate, what request that you're going to send, and once you get response, what you need to do, all the things you can control precisely using a Apex. Okay, and doing Apex sharing. If you remember, we have sharing settings, right, where we have like OWD sharing rules, manual sharing, and what is a role hierarchy. All this we use to share the records, correct? But when we having a complex business scenarios, that is like which cannot be achievable with your sharing rules, and you don't have option to do it in out of box features. So where we can share is using Apex. So if you remember, there we have shown an object called let's say if it's account object, the one more object will got created with account share, where we'll create a records to share this particular. Let's say if we have account record called a TCS, and we're going to share this record with the multiple users or groups or roles, which is going to be complex. And how we going to share? We create records in the account share object, to whom we're going to share, what is the access level, what is the record ID, and what like either edit, read, or what is the access level, and we mention everything, and we create a record in that share object, so it will be shared. And what is the sharing cost, obviously. So these kind of a complex sharing rules when we have, we can achieve with the Apex sharing. And when you have a custom pages like visual force pages, okay, and or lightning aura components, or like LWC components, we can use this Apex as a controller for it in your MVC, and where it will interact with the DB, and it will help you to getting the information from the DB and saving the information to the DB. So there are couple of scenarios, and there might be many more. Like when you're having um, bad jobs, or scheduled jobs. When you're having like something need or some at some time you want to run some code, and how we can achieve. And you have a long running process. You need to process millions of thousands of records. How you can do. So you can do with either batch jobs for scheduling at some time. You can do a scheduled jobs, or you will be having a queuable jobs, and There are method called future methods. All these are like called as asynchronous apex. And if you want to read the metadata, let's say if you're having one object, and what are all the objects you having, you want to have a look at the users. Usually like who can see the all this stuff, the metadata. Only the admins can see this metadata, right? Like you want see to some end users who actually don't do anything, but they want to know what actually the objects we having, and if you pick up any field, what are all the fields available there, and if you take any pick list, what are all the values that you are having active, and they want to see all this information. But which is not only thing, right? When if you're admin, not only the metadata, you having so many controls, permissions, and access that you can control. You can manage the users, all the things you have. But at some point of time, like you want to use this metadata to somewhere in the page. It may be to the end user, or based on that you need to run some logics, or you need to take the data and you need to filter it out, or you will process that and you will give us different results. So how you can read it? So first of all, you read, right? So we can read that metadata from the Apex. We can do that. So there may be many more. So these are like major areas where we are going to use the Apex. And first thing you have to remember was Apex will be saved in force.com servers, and where it will be compiled, and compiled code will be stored there. And when end user requests something, and it will take the request, and it will whatever it saved the compiled code, it will execute there, and it will return the result to the end user. Okay, I hope clear. That's what, like, how does Apex works. So we write the code on our developer console, and where we create a classes and all, and once we store, it will be saved to the cloud. Maybe a quick diagram might help. So it might be similarly like what we have seen yesterday, like MVC. It's almost close how it will be. Mm, so I'm just trying to draw cloud. So here is our cloud, or what we can say, force.com. So what usually we do, there are like two different persons that possible to interact with it. Who are they? Like one is um, developer, and one is end user, right? So what they do, developer will write the code, and end user use it, right? How they will use, they send some, I mean, they'll ask some request, and they'll expect some results. So end user things is just request and get the things. And what developer do, developer write the code, and once it's compiled, and it will be stored there. Mm, but he has to make sure that he is not having any errors um, while saving. Okay, and where it will get stored? So it will be stored in a force.com, what we call it, a compiler or database, we are saying it. So it will be in our database, and in middle, what we'll have, like this is also a server, but where it will get compiled the code and manage the request. So there are like two pieces of it. One is a Apex compiler, and and there is a Apex runtime. So when a developer, when he writes some code, let's say unsaved code, and when he write it, and when he trying to save, what it will do compile the code, and it will store the compiled data. um, so this is going to be database.com where we store everything, and it will store compiled data will be stored over here. Okay, then developer part is, and if there is any compilation errors, it will return back to the to developer itself. It say, okay, there are compilation errors, please fix it. Compilation errors, it will just return back to the developer itself. Please fix the code before saving. If it is having some errors, it will not save. It will be as is. Like if you already saved something and if you made some changes, and if it's having errors, if you're having any errors, then whatever the old code you're having in the database, that will be remain as is. It will not change until unless you cleared all errors and saved again. If it is compiled well, then only the latest compiled will be storage in the database.com. Now, okay, once developer job is done, the next who is actual end user. It could be a developer or any other user in your org. It could be like he could be anyone. So what he can do, he can request like what they need, and what he expect is a result. Okay, I think you hope you understand here, and then what he expect is a result. And once he requests the things, it will go to your Apex runtime. It will not go to your compiler. Why? Because they are not going to compile anything. Already the things which are compiled, he has going to request in the Apex runtime, and Apex runtime will fetch that whatever the requesting from a database, what already compiled data is stored, and it would request there, and it will return the compiled information, and whatever the user is requesting, it will return to them. That's how it's how the Apex work. Okay, hope it is clear. How does it work? And now, so we have some basics like it's also a object-oriented language. So, so Apex is object-oriented language. So when you're saying object-oriented language, it follows all OOPs, how the Java and the CPP, how all the works. It's also having a same kind of thing. So if you already knowing it or somebody are not knowing it, so I'm just giving you some basic understanding of what is OOPs. Okay, before stepping into OOPs, first of all, let's understand some basics things called a object and a class. Okay, I'm just taking a new one. Okay. Now, first of all, consider as an object. So what is an object was in real time, earlier about the programming. So when we call anything as an object, what it will have, like, mm, mm, which things are called as an object, which is having some properties and which is used for some purposes. Let's say if you're having, let's say your laptop. So this is an object. So it is having some properties. So what is its size, what is its color, and how it works, and what it can do. So it will store some power using a battery, and it's having a OS, and it will having an operating system. And when you give some power button, it will switch on, and when you open some application, it will open for you. So it does some things, and it has some properties. It's not only laptop. If you take any object which can be called as an object, if you take anything, it will be having some properties, and it can do some things. Those things we call as an object. So here also in programming language also, um, when we calling something as an object, it will be having some properties and it will do some functions. Okay. Now, what is a class means? So class means it is a kind of mm, a blueprint of an object. That means you can once you have a blueprint, you can take any number of copies, right? Similarly, if you having a laptop, let's say laptop, so so laptop is kind of a class, and if I'm considering my laptop, let's say a a laptop, and this is a one object from the class called a laptop. So there will be n number of laptops, right? And anything if you call like the class means a human is a class, and from human to a person, like there will be n number of person who are the humans. Similarly, like a class is a blueprint. It's having a generic thing, and it will not do anything. So it's just a blueprint. What it will have, it will tell. So what an object will do and what an object have properties, everything it will have a blueprint of it. It don't do anything. It just produce a copies of a objects. That's it. So okay, now coming back to the programming. Okay, now we say like class is a blueprint and object is a copy of it or like instances of it. So like do we call like the same as a properties and some things too? No. Um, so when we're saying a class and object, so class is a blueprint of objects that we create, and object is instance of the class. And if you want to do something, if you want to perform something, um, we create an object using a class and perform on this objects. And what you said, like we can create any n number of objects from the class. And let's say when we having a two classes, because they they have the properties and they have functionalities, but they cannot do anything. So they cannot go and interact with other class. So it need a object, then only it's getting a life, and objects can interact with each other and classes cannot. Okay. um now now we having like saying it will be having some properties and some things that can do, right? So what we call in the programming language, what are all we saying like properties that are all called as a variables, and when we're saying things it can perform, it is called methods. So methods are called, or like methods or functions, whatever it will be easy to say. Methods or functions or treated as a things that can perform. Now, let's see how a sample class will look like. There will be so many things. Just I will give like how it will be named. Let's say it's of class. I will take as example. Let's say class as a student. Okay, I'm having one class, and what kind of a property it does? Like it having a um, student student name is one thing, and they're having roll number, and they're having, let's say, age, and there'll be many more, just I'm limiting to the three. And what function the a student can do, he can read, he can write. There's so many things, right, the student can do. So just I'm limiting to the read, write, um, and speak, just limited to the three functionality. So by terms like you can understand, like variables is the properties of the student. So when you're saying like we have a student class, let's say student name is some x, and that's going to be a one object. We'll create one object, and in that object first this is like the property, what kind of property it can have. For student name, what is his name, we can have that a property. Okay, and the student X is having some roll number. What is the XYZ roll number? Okay, he's having some age, 20, 30, or 15 age, and read. So when we ask the student X to read, okay, he will read that particular thing. And we ask something to write for the student, he will do. He'll ask them to speak or answer some question, then he will do it. So the class will have everything that needs what properties it does and what function it does. The object is, yes, we will do a copy of it, and then we will assign the properties to it. So what property it hold, it will be in the class, and what function he can do, that will be in the class. And when we want to use it for one instance, then we'll create a class instance called an object, and we use for that. Okay, hope so far we are clear on this. Now, okay, now let's try to understand what oops. So all things will surround, like revolve around this class and object things only. The oops are. So now we'll understand what are like different oops or object oriented language properties. Okay, first thing, what are all those? Abstraction is one. So abstraction, what is this property does was, we can hide some properties, and we can hide some methods, and we can show what are all it required. So abstraction is a property of the class, that is, you can control the what are the features that you're going to expose and what are the features that you can hide. That is an abstraction. So it's not done here yet. Okay, so I'm just giving a high level information what are all these OOPS concepts, and we're going to deep dive in the next sessions by using these concepts, what are all the properties that we're going to build, and we'll continue further. Okay, I'm just giving a high level introduction to this OOPS concepts. So they are like total four: abstraction, and then encapsulation, and inheritance, and polymorphism. So abstraction is able to um, show what is required, require, hide, remaining. You can say in the other way around also. You can hide everything and expose whatever it's required. Okay, so thing was abstraction is a property where you can hide some part of it and expose some part of it. That's concept called a abstraction. In simple terms, I'm saying, okay, and then encapsulation. So what is encapsulation? Encapsulation is binding all together. So if you take the example of this class, what we are doing, so it's not only having a single thing. So it's a kind of uh, three things I can say. So what we have was we having like what is this class name was and what kind of a properties it is having and what functions it does. So it's going to be a class name is going to one part and what are all the um, properties it does and in terms what we call them as a um, variables variables that a class are having and what functions the class can do. So we are binding all together and writing a class. This kind of a concept is called encapsulation. Binding all different things together is an encapsulation. Okay, and then we having a concept called inheritance. Inheritance. Okay, so it is inheritance means acquiring a properties of other class to this class. So we're all these concepts will revolve around class only, right? What are all the different properties of a class in terms we can say. So when we write one class, let's say I'm having a class one. So I have some properties. Sorry, I have some properties and have some function. Okay, in class two, I want to use the same thing and I want to add some further. So what I will do, I have to inherit the class one in class two. So we call this as a super class and we call this as a subclass or this is a main class or this is a um, or abstract class and then we call second class as a dependent class. So there are like different naming and different features that we are going to build in using the inheritance. Inheritance is basically acquiring the properties of one class into the another class. So we say like a parent class